Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everyday Anarchism. I'm your host, Graham Culbertson. You might hear me say these words again because I think I did record a brief intro in this conversation you're about to hear, but this was a really abbreviated conversation. I only had 40 minutes, so I wanted to take a second to introduce it. I am talking to Michael Townsend, who is I don't know how to describe him. He does tape art. He's a uh, conceptual street artist who everything he does is beautiful and without permission, and yet also temporary and pro-social and in no way destructive. And then he, Michael Townsend and seven other people made a secret mall apartment. It was a some sort of strange everyday anarchist anti-capitalist protest parody of the absolute enormous monstrosity of a mall that was built in Providence, Rhode Island about 20 years ago. And he and his seven fellow, I was going to say provocateurs, but that's not it. I mean, collaborators, fellow artists, filmed in these with these little digital cameras that they hid in Altoids boxes. This is the most, if you're old enough like me to remember what 2003 was like, it was a very 2003 thing. There was urban renewal and malls and handheld digital cameras and no smartphones and PlayStation 2s and Altoids. They filmed it, and the director, Jeremy Workman, who is a documentary filmmaker, took all the footage as well as recording interviews with Michael and the seven other participants, and we didn't get to it in the interview. He also staged some delightful Errol Morris style reenactments that I will not spoil here. And so this is just this film is about everything that I am interested in at the intersection of capitalism and art and life and anarchy and without permissions. And it was a film that I loved, and I'm hoping both of these guys will be back on the podcast in the future to talk about this stuff, because it was a thrilling conversation, and it's a hell of a film. I watched it through a screener copy. I hope it comes to a movie theater near you if you have a chance to see it, because it will be just an absolute riot to see in person. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Jeremy Workman and Michael Townsend about the film Secret Mall Apartment. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everyday Anarchism. I am your host, Graham Culbertson. I'm a little discombobulated right now because I'm on someone else's Zoom call recording this. I'm here to talk about the film Secret Mall Apartment with the filmmaker and the primary subject. So I'm going to ask these two to introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there. So I don't know, Jeremy, Michael, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. My
Yeah.
name's Jeremy Workman, and I'm the director of Secret Mile Apartment, which is this incredible bonkers documentary that's hit in theaters across the country about Michael Townsend and them and seven others living inside the Providence Place Mall and in a secret apartment for nearly 4 years and getting away with it.
All right. I'm Michael Townsend. I'm a public artist that lives in Providence, Rhode Island. I work with teams of artists to make art with and for people on buildings, sort of soft temporary graffiti using just tape. And Jeremy made a movie that exposes all of our secret projects that were going on between 2003 and 2007, puts them all into one document.
Man, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, so and now I want to get to the film as soon as possible, but just this is actually this is not the first time I've spoken to filmmakers. This is the first junket I've done. Are you guys just sitting in this Zoom call all day and just this array of talking heads on the internet are like, tell me about your film, and then you give the same answers?
Sure. I mean, it is, I mean, not the same answers. I mean, everyday anarchism is very different here. But,
Yeah,
I think what's neat is we're releasing a documentary in theaters and it's going pretty wide in a lot of theaters across the country. So it's just like a really neat experience. Not many documentaries play in theaters, not many do like this kind of press tour and do so much publicity, but there's so much interest in this story that it's just, that's what we're doing, and it's been really
Michael, you
fun
want
and
to add to that? Are you
gratifying.
ready to go?
yeah. I mean, this story took place in Providence, Rhode Island, and the movie is has kicked off in the mall. So it's incredibly rare that you get to watch a movie about a crime in the location where the crime was committed. So it opened this weekend. We we had a sense that the people of Providence and the local region would be excited about it, but they sold out theater after theater after theater. The interest in the story has been persistent since my arrest in 2007. It became international news, and then it became folklore. And in our city, it is a story that has persisted. And Jeremy is the first person who ever saw all the footage that we shot and was tasked with figuring out how to bring it into uh, craft it into a narrative that would be interesting for people to take in.
Yeah, Graham. I mean, I'm sure, maybe your listeners you might do an intro and help explain this, but, just I could give a little context. So in 2003 to 2007, Michael Townsend and seven other of his art collaborators, troublemakers, instigators, whatever you want to call them, they were mad about gentrification that was happening in their neighborhood, which is something that everybody could relate to. These giant developments that are happening and we kind of have no control of them. And the biggest project of them all came to their town, which was the Providence Place Mall. And it is the biggest, this is in the late 90s, and it's the biggest construction project in the history of Rhode Island. It is a massive, massive building that takes up 13 acres. Michael, like the actual square space of it, don't you?
Yeah, it's about 11 stories high and 1.3 million square feet. It is a colossal structure.
Yeah, and this is for a city that has like 150,000 people. So
Don't
this
we have
is.
more people than that?
Oh, you have more? I thought it was less.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I'll look at the
it
exact number.
yeah, this massive, massive mall goes into their neighborhood, destroys a lot of the old mill buildings that were there, displaces kind of hundreds of people. This is in the late 90s. And Michael and seven other artists decide to do something about it. They don't really know what they're going to do. They sneak into the mall. They discover this space that's about 800 square feet, and they decide to occupy it and make it their own secret apartment. And they kept this going for 4 years. It's just a crazy, crazy bonkers story.
Yeah, in terms of whether I provide, obviously the listener listening will know whether I recorded an intro to this or not, and it'll probably I'll just go back and listen to see whether I feel like we covered it. I just need, so first I'll say, look, the film, the film is great. I highly recommend that everyone check it out. I absolutely loved it, and I have to admit, I'm a cinephile, and one of my deepest hatreds is boring documentaries. I hate
Me
boring documentaries.
too.
Yeah. No, but just when people say documentary, they mean something boring. They're not talking about,
Boring.
but it's true. They're not talking about the work of Agnes Varda or Errol Morris before he became a Netflix person. They're talking about Ken Burns and Ken Burns style stuff, and I can't sit through that shit. If I'm watching a documentary and I'm supposed to be like, look, I love movies, but I know this isn't a movie. It's a PowerPoint presentation that's been
Yes.
filmed. I just want to die. And this, sorry, go ahead,
You're
Jeremy.
speaking my language because, we've all seen documentaries and all your listeners have seen documentaries, and so many are that. They're just these kind of Microsoft Word cut and paste PowerPoint presentations. And, I've resisted that my whole career. I've always tried to really make, exciting, entertaining, engaging documentaries that are for audiences and have surprise. And this story, when Michael and the seven other artists let me be the person to make the movie, I knew that we had an opportunity just to make some like amazing documentary that would just be really, really fun and would kind of, be like a middle finger to those kind of documentaries, the same way that Michael and his group was doing a middle finger to the mall. So it really was, it was definitely a case where the form and content all came together. I'll tell you something funny though, Graham. You know who gave a huge shout out to this documentary on his socials? Ken Burns. He loved it. He couldn't believe how entertaining it was. So
Yeah, let's say I like Ken Burns more than I like Ken Burns's movies. How
sure,
about
I
how
get
about
that.
that?
I get it. I get it.
Uh, so I want to turn now. So I guess, and this maybe will be the only time you have to discuss the A word in this press junket today. So let's talk about anarchism, which is to say, it seems to me, I mean, I don't, there's, the film doesn't stress the political dimension too much, I think, except at the beginning. It's very clear at the beginning. But it seems to me that undoubtedly, at the beginning of the film, when you talk about Michael, where you guys are living in the, the abandoned punk space, I assumed there were a lot of anarchist A logos and food not bombs and just the general counterculture milieu there. Am I reading that correctly? Because
That
we don't
is
see too much of that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
that is a fair enough visualization. Definitely. At the heart of it, this is always a push and pull about ideas about permission, and anarchy is rooted in having no permissions or saying, "Hey, whatever permissions you're putting in front of me, I'm going past that. I'm a perpetual line stepper." And Fort Thunder definitely had it was an engine of chaos. So we had a place where we had no rules. We could do what we wanted. We can make as much noise as we wanted. And in a space like that, you can create new things. Like it's not like these people are wasting their time or are not creating anything. They're actually creating culturally significant moments and spaces, creating meaning constantly. And anarchy can do that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
one of the running backstories of Secret Realm Apartment is that world of like art collectives, particularly Fort Thunder, which was
Yeah.
this, incredibly influential, insane, chaotic, a creative powerhouse that was happening in these old mill space areas of Providence where, people were coming together and doing all kinds of art and music, including Michael Townsend, of course. Michael lived there at Fort Thunder, and that became, a real part of the story of the Secret Mall apartment where, it's one of those things where it's like you least expect it. You hear this thing about, just the bonkers, them living in a mall. And then you're like realizing that, wow, it has ties and connections to the DNA of this, crazy art collective that was existing in Providence in the 90s. And a lot of bands came out of it, including Lightning Bolt and a lot of amazing art. And it is a really vital kind of crazy, slice of time where there were a lot of art collectives in the country and in other cities as well. And a lot of them were shut down around the same time, including Fort Thunder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A lot of this will be obvious to my listeners, but like there's just there's anarchy. I mean, I definitely think it's anarchy, but it's the thing that is crazy is, as you say, Michael, it's a creative force. It's undoubtedly pro-social, and everyone, from the situationists and the surrealists to Banksy have this sense of like they're trying to make a better world through this, I mean, through this illegal art,
Yeah,
this no permissions thing. And that's hard to get people to understand that.
it is. Well, that's something I think that's interesting in the movie is that those concepts, though they're not explicitly addressed in the movie, are laid bare before the viewer.
Absolutely.
So you could view this movie, like, let's say, in the list of titles for the movie, where Secret Mall Apartment is the most obvious one. A second title would be like Art Without Permission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's forcing you
definitely.
right away to be like, wait, and a viewer will look at it and be like, I don't know, this small apartment, I'm not sure if that's art, and I don't know if I like these guys for not doing permission. But then you see like the tunnel project, this large sculpture installation, and you're like, wait, this is beautiful. I like this thing. Again, no
Oh,
permissions.
you should explain the tunnel
Yeah.
project
Yeah,
because
the
that
tunnel.
really gets to the heart of you as this kind of, you
Oh,
know, artist pushing those boundaries.
yeah, so not too far from the mall, there was a water drainage tunnel, 20 feet wide, 6 feet high, 250 feet long. And I had been using it as a laboratory for making art and displaying art for over a decade when I decided to build a full sculpture installation inside of it. And you'll see it in the movie. It's a very, very, very personal project. It's like a large diary entry about myself and his life-size sculptures of myself. Every object I ever owned in my entire life was put in these boxes and hung from the ceiling. So I left it all in that space. I showed it to 13 people, lock and chain, walked away. And so Jeremy's film was the first time it's ever being like publicly shown. And then,
Yeah, that's, I mean, art
yeah,
anarchism in such a big way. And people watch that footage and they just kind of don't know what to make of it. That Michael had built this massive artwork within the cities, like essentially within the sewers and the tunnels of the city for no and kind of provided no context, just kind of did it and didn't make
yeah,
a big thing about it. So he had filmed, there was some just kind of crappy footage of it that would crappy meaning low quality. Like the footage
yes,
itself is incredible. But yeah, the low quality aspect. And that was we were able to sort of thread that into this story of the secret apartment. Again, like your listeners will be like, wait, how does this connect to the secret apartment? But it sort of does because Michael's whole career has been about being this provocateur of artists in public spaces and messing
yeah,
with public spaces.
yeah. I think the this team of artists, the project that sort of had united us was we'd been doing these tape art projects together, but when the Twin Towers fell, the week after they fell, we made the decision to go into Manhattan and however long it was going to take, we were going to do a life-size tape art silhouette of every single fireman and every single airline passenger on the buildings of Manhattan. So that's 500 locations in that city without permission. And this is like the most outrageous act of daylight graffiti. Like we're broad daylight walking up to federal buildings and banks and retail spaces and construction sites and just drawing openly. Our work is temporary, so it can be removed whenever we got hassled by somebody. But we had been for 2 years leading up to the department in this art righteousness space of like, regardless of permissions, we think this is a good idea and we're going to do it. So we are feeling righteous that we should do it. We're documenting as we go along. And the 2 years leading up to it, we're not only doing the September 11th project, but we're also fighting local developers who are trying to knock down the mill building we live in. So we've got this 2 year fight to try to save our own building, which we do not succeed in doing. It turns into a parking lot. We save a lot of buildings around us, but not the one we live in. And the confluence of all of those things resulted in building a condominium inside a mall without them knowing about it and occupying it for 4 years.
Yeah, so let's there's so much to be said. So let's get to this thing that is in some ways amazing, is befuddling, which is that this story, I mean, I must admit I didn't hear about the story. I know it was international news. What was I doing? I guess I was living in Chapel Hill. I was in grad school at the time. but the movie starts off with like this is a big news story in Providence, and it's so clear. In other words, it wasn't a big news story. Local artist punks are living in some abandoned mills that no one is using, that capitalism built 100 years ago. That is dog bites man, right? But local
Hmm.
punks are living in a space that capitalism claims is fully used and vibrant right now. The fact that you guys correctly pointed out, and the response was dead on. For some reason, that is really, I mean, to the point that we're talking about it right now, 20 years later, that's really important to people. People
Hmm.
squatting in a building capitalism built, no one cares about that. People squatting in a building that capitalism claims is full of life, that it bugs people. There's like, it's like there's a parasite in the organism that they think is truly healthy. Why is it driving people so crazy? It's hard for me to articulate.
I think the question is, does it bug people? Like when people hear a story, they're like, I want that. I want to have a home in this mall. Like we keep hearing a refrain when people hear the story that they're excited about the idea that we created a sanctuary. And I think that was a private space inside of such an even more private space, sort of creates the layers of magnitude about it. But I think people are hungry to have spaces that they believe are safe, where they can manifest themselves. And the secret mall seems to be a proxy for that. They hear it and they're like, I want this. I want what they have.
I want to
Uh,
add something to this though, which is, I think and James Mercer, who's this great artist, who's one of the what we call the Mall Eight, he's featured in the movie. He has this great line in the documentary, which is that, we feel kind of a lot of people feel powerless around these big, corporate entities that come into our neighborhoods and decide what's best for us, and we don't really have we're just kind of powerless with their whims and choices. And I think what's cool about the secret mall apartment is it kind of, it kind of gets to that. Like these guys, maybe they were powerless against the mega mall that was moving into Providence, but they're just like, hey, here's a middle finger, we're going to stand up to this and do this weird thing, and you may not get it, but we're standing up and it's our act of protest. And I think that's what's also really cool about it.
Yeah, no, I agree that it's cool. It's thrilling. I still want to push this idea that not that it bothered people, but it sparks something both for people who would be opposed to the mall, but also normal people, people who are not out squatting and making punk art in broad daylight. There's something about this. And you and some of the other people who are interviewed, some of the other eight, speak to this at the beginning of the film. There's something uncanny about the idea that the mall is an incomplete project, that there is room for someone to live in it, that capitalism is not total. And then, of course, as anyone who is alive in 2025 knows, malls are the great emblems now of the fact that capitalism is not total and it is all falling apart. But in
right.
2004, that was hard for people to conceive of, and you guys saw it.
Yeah, the mall's placement in our city is in a buffer zone between downtown and all the old industrial mills. So the industrial mills are, the backbone of the neighborhood I'm in is the heart of the Industrial Revolution. So starting in the mid 1800s, these buildings are producing enough stuff to make Providence one of the richest cities in the United States. And it's fascinating to me that we go from seeing um, the buildings produce so much stuff to falling into disrepair and then being refilled with just artists and small businesses who are producing so much stuff. And then now the new turn is they're turning into places where people sit on couches and watch Netflix. And this trajectory is wild. And so the mall shows up and it has like one single vision, which is like, we're going to sell you some things and you're going to be able to suck you into this like new image of what you should and could be. And so us living in the mall sort of like followed this popcorn trail from the Industrial Revolution all the way into the mall, where we're turning into the Netflix watching couch dwellers and letting the mall consume and define who we are. And that in itself, for us as outsiders, effectively to the culture, the mall culture at large, was the project. Like that's the direction it was going in. Is like, let's go through the psychological adventure of letting this mall define us as human beings.
I was struck by the way that the mall represents a form of utopianism that
Mhm.
capitalism no longer even indulges in anymore, right? Like when your life is Netflix and Amazon, you've just sort of
Uh-huh.
admitted some of this is the pandemic, a lot of it is just what has changed. You're just sort of admitting I'm going to sit at home. I'm alone, and there's factories somewhere, and someone who I don't see is going to deliver me everything I need while I'm sitting on this couch. Whereas the mall says, come here and be surrounded by many other people who will all with you be buying stuff that will make you happy. It is a communal vision.
Right. And I think people still seek that out. Like, we can say malls are dying and all that, but the mall is still attractive, like because you go there to, as you said, like experience the communal urge to buy these things, to be seen. It operates as this effectively as a public space, but it is far from public. It is so private, so gated. I mean, every mall has a list. You can find the rules written somewhere that
Yeah.
says no pictures, no video. And our mall just said no teenagers unaccompanied past like 5 p.m. or something. Like they're and if you are not shopping in a mall, they have a right to just kick you out for not shopping. Uh
Yeah, it's
that
this weird like public private
Yeah.
space. It's kind of the definition is really kind of gray area, which is like why that whole thing with the whole thing with the apartment so kind of hits at that. Like, is
Mhm.
it public? Is it private? Are you allowed to do this? Who owns the mall? Is community supposed to kind of go there and come together, but you're still in a private space? It's very
we'll
confusing.
talk about it. It's failing. It failed. The whole thing failed. The mall is $255 million in debt. They went in on an
Mm.
all retail model and it has collapsed under its own weight and expectations. So the mall currently, as of this fall, was given by a judge a receivership, which means basically like a financial babysitter. So these people have come in, they did not make the mess, but they're trying to figure out how to solve it. And this is a fascinating question for, you know, who we are in 2025. How do you deal with a building of that size? Because it can't fail because it's the largest organ in Providence,
Mm.
you know. So we can't lose those internal organs, but in order to succeed, it will have to figure out how to become a entity that serves the whole human.
Yeah.
And that is a very difficult assignment for a building like that.
Totally. It's interesting because like we're all like, F the mall, but that thing is such a massive, huge structure in the middle of downtown Providence. And this is also the case with so many malls across the country that when they go dead and they really mess up a
They take
city or a
everybody with them.
town's like economy. They take people down with it. Exactly. So like what do
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah, well, one option, the obvious potential option, is that it becomes a dead space where punks skateboard and start art
Oh,
collectives, right?
that- I it's almost too big. Like
No, no, no,
it's
no, Michael.
like a
I'm
whole
the historian
town.
here. Let me say they would have said that. They absolutely would have said that about Fort Thunder in like 1937. They would have said it's too big.
It's too big.
It can't just be filled with punks. And I don't care how big capitalism builds it, Michael. We can ruin it. But that's not what we want. We want this space to become a pro-social space that's part of the community, not a counterculture.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's
Like,
almost, and by definition, it's almost against that completely. So it's just you have to like really reroute the whole thing to kind of get there.
It was built to be against the community. The building itself is against
Exactly.
the community. And it's,
There's a neat thing in the documentary where like Michael points out how that mall just like was built with its back against this entire neighborhood, and that the it didn't even have an entrance for half of the city. So like how are you supposed to respond to that, as if you're on that side of the city, like what's your position there?
yeah, I no, that's absolutely right. And I'm just gonna say again, it is crazy that nevertheless there is a pro-social vision baked. It is one based on commerce and exclusion of many types of people, and yet it still suggests there should be a living, breathing community in the heart of Providence and in the world of Bezos and Musk. Capitalism doesn't even offer a capitalist community anymore. We're supposed to be fully capitalist isolates, and that is it almost makes you nostalgic for 2003 if that's possible.
no,
Jesus.
that's a real thing. Like I just read one of my favorite articles to read about how TV spy on you. Because it blows my mind that you sitting at home, that you have a thing that used to be more of a personal relationship where like whatever you watched was your own. And now literally every TV sold is just taking the content of what you're watching and turning it into profiles of you and selling it off.
Mm.
Insane. Our project ran from 2003 to 2007. I was arrested like a couple months after the iPhone debuted. So that sort
Yeah.
of helps give you a sense of like how smartphones were while we were in that space. And and this is something we've reflected on as a team of artists, like we were forever present in that space. The only shared screen was a little tiny television where we played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. We played this one game for 4 years. All the No one else, it was not connected to the cloud, nothing like that. All of our footage only shared between the 8 of us. No one ever saw it, never posted. And no one had a smartphone. That there was no social media to share with effectively. So I think that presentness was one of the reasons why it lasted for as long as it did. I think the presentness is one of the things that made us feel emotionally connected to the space and each other. And we've been asking Q&As, could this project happen today? And I'm like, I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
think so.
think
Like,
so.
given the amount of security cameras out there, given the amount of like people on their smartphones, how eager people are like, into like posting stuff about other people, I don't
Yeah,
feel like you could get away with it now.
I feel yeah. Someone would have. Yeah, the reality of it is that some random person in the parking lot would capture us because the extension of the security state has gone from not just the security forces there to just like everybody. It's like a gigantic network where we're monitored constantly about where we are while simultaneously telling everybody else where they are.
Yeah, like there's scenes in the documentary where they're like bringing couches and furniture in secretly into the mall apartment. And I think like people would just be like posting that, be like, check this out. And that it would just be impossible to not be secretive about it anymore. I think
It'd be
in
hard.
the changing landscape of our world, it's harder and harder to be secret about anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's totally right in terms of other people would be noticing, but I think, Michael, I think you might have also be suggesting that 8 of you would have been unlikely to be as connected to one another and as unnet.
Right.
Wouldn't somebody have texted somebody else, "Hey, we live in the mall," or shared it on Instagram and they thought they had their Instagram account locked out properly, but next thing you know, there's like a rave, and the next thing you know, the cops have come. Does that sound right?
Oh, sort of. I mean, yeah, if you have, you know, eight people who are spending time in that space and making, plans about other art projects, and in that sanctuary, no one's spending time on their phones outside the occasional phone call. Um, and we're, I think, we were really good at keeping secrets. One of the artists, I witnessed one of the artists bring their parents to a showing of this movie in Washington, D.C., and it was the first time their parents found out about it. Was seen on film.
I'm
At the
totally
Q&A.
like when we would talk to like all the people that worked with you, Michael, and did this with you, no one told anything. They didn't tell
Yeah.
their boyfriend, girlfriend, mothers, coworkers.
In the movie,
Nobody knew about this.
there's
I
a
don't know if that
character,
was a reaction, part of the time or what your project. I mean, it's crazy.
part of his personality.
Yeah.
Emily Eustack, who's in the movie, you'll see her. She pops up. She was such an active player in all of it. This movie just released at the mall this weekend, and so many people came up to me. They're like, "I worked with her for 10 years. How did this never come up?" People are like, I lived with her. It just never came up. So I think personality plays a big role in keeping secrets.
All right, we're running out of time. There's two. I got to ask. I don't know if this question more for Jeremy or not. There's two films I want to ask about that I was thinking about.
Sure.
First of all, the most famous mall apartment in cinema that I'm aware of is in a Romero film,
Of
and I'm
course.
wondering if either Michael, while you guys were living in it, or Jeremy, when you were making, you were thinking that like you were thinking about Dawn of the Dead at all.
I mean, I think, it's funny and I know we're all like, we love Dawn of the Dead, obviously. But I think Dawn of the Dead like looms over this documentary in such a big way, when you watch Dawn of the Dead, it's so impactful because yeah, it's a zombie movie, but it's also like has all these like it's about something else that the zombies are just, in the mall and that then they've kind of found their space to be safe in the mall, and I think it just really looms over this documentary. Michael, you what you were gonna add
Well,
something?
yeah, that movie shows the idea that in your raw state, in the society left behind, when you have nothing, where do you gravitate to? And that's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is that their North Star in their
They return to what they
zombie
know.
state, they return to their home. The mall is their home. That's all they know. That's all they want. Uh, and yes, we are aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was putting together scenes with you guys in the food court and you guys at Pottery Barn and just walking through the mall in the middle of the night, and I'm like, this is Dawn of the Dead.
So the other film that sprang to mind is the Varda JR collaboration. It was called Visage Voyage, I think in French. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I mean, I haven't seen it. I've seen a
Hmm.
lot of Agnes Varda's stuff. She's a big influence on me. I think are you talking about Faces Places or are you
Faces
talking about
Places is
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. I haven't seen that one. And I've seen much of her work. Your listeners probably know her work, French filmmaker, made really incredible documentaries, many personal documentaries, but she did a documentary on JR, who's also a muralist and kind of counter artist, and but I haven't seen it. It's good, right?
Oh, it's fantastic. Michael, what were you gonna say?
No, that's on my list now.
Okay, so it is a movie by, in my opinion, I mean, Varda's my favorite filmmaker,
Oh, nice.
and it's one of the greatest documentarians of all time who made a movie with someone who does temporary counterculture, pro-social art And so as I was watching this film, I was just like, "Oh my God, this is like an unofficial sequel to Faces Places." You guys got to see it. That's all. That's
Yeah,
all I say.
definitely.
Cool,
But
thanks.
definitely will. And JR stuff is really cool. I remember seeing it in New York, like all during the kind of early and mid
It's
2000s. Just,
I mean,
yeah.
it's about capitalism. It's
Yep.
about, I mean, there's mill buildings in it. It's just the resonances are incredible. So those are the two films. Sorry, I'm a film professor, you know.
But her movies like, The Gleaners and I and
Yeah.
Peaches of Agnes, those are big influences on me in terms of like messing with the form and being meta and
Yeah.
self-reflexive. Secret Mile Apartment is very meta. It kind of does a lot, has a lot of moves and Varda definitely really was very playful with the form.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I thought I had seen that. All right, we are out of time. I think there's time for like maybe a last word from each of you before I have to run because you guys got to junk it all day.
I mean, I'll do the stupid publicity thing, and Michael could take it home with something deeper. But I'd love folks to see this movie. I think your audience will really respond to it. They could find theaters, on secretmalapartment.com. And I think it really speaks to a lot of people with a lot of ideas. And yeah, reach out. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I think the movie is and an excellent buffet of art ideas. And to some of your audience members, like it might also be a call to action. So, and if it gives you permission to like take on those projects you're thinking about, then we've done a good job.
Mm.
Get out there, do it.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. Jeremy, Michael, thank you for your time. This is absolutely thrilling.
Oh, so fun to be here. Thanks, Graham.